mile. And the actual event, I really loved running over in Europe because they run the meets at night. Most of the meets here in this country are run during the day. The weather, the heat, the wind, you know, it's just not a great environment for running. But over in Europe, they run the meets at night, sometimes at 11, 12, midnight. And where most of my best races were run were Oslo, Norway. I think 8 of my top 10 miles were run there. So that's obviously my favorite place to run. And they'd always run it at 11:30 at night so that it could go live on Wide World of Sports in the United States. So it was always a nice running environment.
I think for me personally was I enjoyed running track races like Steve did when I was early in my career, but later on, the Boston Marathon was probably the. You hear me with this wick whack in the background that's scratching me. Sorry. The Boston Marathon probably for me.
Yell loud while we try to fix the batteries. You can hold that, but it doesn't work.
Fix it better. Boston for me was probably my favorite just because of the historical factor, the course itself, the fact that there was so much crowd support. So Boston was probably my favorite.
I'd have to say the rock and roll events are my favorite, and I think it's because of the relationships that I have on the administrative side of things here with the competitor group and the atmosphere. My first race was San Diego Rock and Roll, and just having the San Diego Rock and Roll was my first, and having the bands every mile. I think that it's now a trend that competitors started, and you see it at every race you go to now. They're having bands and cheerleaders and the whole deal. So I love running the rock and roll events. Outside of that, probably my favorite race was in 5th grade when I beat my sister's mile time in PE by over a minute because I had bragging rights at home. So that was pretty big.
I think of it in terms of kind of setting precedents, you know, the first. If you think back, I was lucky enough to be in the first 5-borough race in the New York City Marathon. And I'm on record as saying, when they asked me, did I want to be in the race, I said, sure. I want to be there to see if they can shut down the streets and cooperate in these 5 boroughs in New York City to actually make this race happen. And I think, so it's not particularly that I have favorite races or situations, but it's more the precedent-setting aspect of it. And that brings it around to truly, not just because I'm here, Phoenix is one of my favorite rock and roll events. Why? Because, again, when we came here for the first one, what, 8, 9 years ago, and we were talking to the city fathers and the representatives of Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Tempe, and said we would like to run a marathon and a half marathon through your cities, they basically said, say what? You know, and again, there's something about this sport that kind of brings out that experimental and risk-taking aspect in people. And so for me, it's not so much the particular events in themselves ongoing, but the ones like here in Phoenix and in New York City, where you can kind of set that precedent. And this brings it back around to Josh. You know, it's so great that he has a forum here to try to set the record. And I don't think there's anything wrong with setting it up to just see if it can happen. Because John Bingham and I were talking about that on the drive over. There's a real chance here. I'm rooting for you. I hope you find your niche here. And I also, if you want to talk tomorrow about how you kind of want to, you know, strategize here and how you now want to approach these ultra marathon races, you can either talk tonight about it, or you can come to the expo tomorrow and hear you explain some things.
I think, oh my goodness.